Oh, key change! Yeah! Super common in J-pop. Well, how do you do, fellow kids? It's your neighborhood music overanalyzer and friendly music producer Kenan here, back with another music analysis / review / reaction / breakdown. And this time, we're going to be taking a look at the anime opening for Laid Back Camp Season 3. And the song is called Laid Back Journey by Kimi no Ne. Let's dive into this tune together. Now, some of you may not know this, but Laid Back Camp, or Yuru Camp as I've always called it, is actually one of my favorite anime ever. I haven't actually started Season 3 yet, although now I'll probably have to. I remember back when Season 1 dropped and we had that funky opening, very like, I want you back like, right? So I was very pleased when I heard just how funky Season 3's opening was. Let's first talk about who this artist is, as some of you might not be familiar. Kimi no Ne is composed of 3 folks: producer Kushitamine, singer and songwriter Tsumugi Shachi, and violinist Mai Otani. Now, these 3 folks are all members of High Kick Entertainment, which is a collective of musicians and visual artists focusing on music production. Now that's pretty dope. Now, the violinist Mai Otani, you can actually see in the music video for this one. It's pretty obvious which one she is. She's the one playing the violin, of course. Mai Otani has actually played on the Yuru Camp soundtrack before this one, specifically in the Yuru Camp movie, and you can actually really hear her fiddle chops there. We'll talk about her and those chops later, but for now, let's get into a few of the things that I thought really make this song special, and more importantly, why it's funky! I picked 3 things: the funk rhythms, the modulations, and the violin as a whole. Let me explain. First, let's talk about the funk rhythms. Now, this song itself is not a funk song. Let's get that very perfectly clear. It's firmly very J-pop, but the elements of the instrumentation evoke a pop soul vibe, which is not itself funk, but can be funky, if you get what I'm saying. And here in this song, we've got something that is funky. Right off the bat, we get that intro guitar and violin trades. Alright, we're seeing that the rhythm tells us, the listener, that we should be prepared for some 16th note grooves. Now, what do I mean by 16th note grooves? Well, if you haven't watched the last video where I broke down the latest Stray Kids song, go click this card here. But if you already have, you may remember that I explained what subdivisions are and how that song is divided into 8th note subdivisions. Quick crash course, because I don't want to waste your time here. Most songs are in a 4/4 time signature, and that means each measure of the song consists of 4 quarter note beats. Sounds something like this. When we add notes that fit evenly into the space between those quarter note beats, we divide the space by half, basically. And that gives us 8th notes. 1 quarter divided by 2 is 1/8, right? But if we know anything about our fractions, if we subdivide it even further, we get 16ths. 1/8 divided by 2 is a 16th, right? And that allows us to be able to create funkier, what we call syncopations. Now that just means the rhythms that are not on the beat. Notice I'm not saying they're not on beat. I'm saying they're not on the beat, which is the 1, 2, 3, and 4. Those are the beats that I'm talking about.
Feature Kenan here. I just wanted to add that when people say that music is offbeat, a more accurate description as musicians might be to say that it's out of time. Just a little tidbit that I wanted to add there. Back to the video.
Check this out. We counted that last video's song with just 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and, right? But how do we insert even further subdivision in between? It seems impossible. But watch this. Musicians often count 16th notes this way, and no one really knows where it came from, but after the number, we'll say E, and after the and, we'll say or So when we count 16th notes, we say 1E and a, 2E and a, 3E and a, 4E and a. Why is this important to know? Well, let's take a quick look at the chorus melody here. I'll show it right now on screen, and we can see that a lot of these words and melodies line up on the E's and the U's of the rhythm. We're also seeing this back on that guitar riff that's in the opening. And now that we have our 16th note grid explained, let's talk a little bit about one of the funk rhythms that the piano is playing in the chorus. It's very similar to the feel that we have in a song like Get Lucky by Daft Punk. There's a rhythm of a piano going, and these rhythms are lining up on the different subdivisions each time, making it very nicely syncopated and yet cohesive. Notice that the gap between these hits are the same. That's pretty neat, right? And that's just one example of a common funk rhythm. For the second point, let's get into modulations. What are modulations? What am I even talking about, right? Well, you may know them colloquially as key changes, although that phrase carries a connotation that the key of the song changes to whatever we went to for the remainder of the song, or at least until there's another key change going in the same direction. That's up or down, but probably up. However, when you say modulation, it's not necessarily what I would call a permanent change. It can be temporary. And very commonly in J-pop, we see this phenomenon of the choruses being in a different key than the verses, pre-chorus, and the intro. Some examples include like some Perfume songs like Love the World is the first one that comes to mind. And wouldn't you know it, in this song we start in the key of C, our verses are in C, and yet our choruses move up to D, and when we leave the chorus we go back to C when we get to that second verse. So because this is temporary, I'm calling this a modulation. Now let's take a look at this modulation with a microscope and look at what chords are taking us to that key change. From that pre-chorus, our last chord is us just hanging out on G sus4, but then we go into D major and the chord becomes G major 7. And you'll notice that they have the same letter name, G, but that fancy stuff at the end that comes after the G, that's the quality of the chord. That stuff is different. Well, what's up with that? So there are different types of modulations out there. I'm not going to get into all of them in this video, but here we have a pivot modulation, which is when you use a chord that's shared between the two keys. In this case, it's C and D. Those are the keys that we're bridging between and connecting them with this shared chord. In C major, G is the 5 chord, and in D major, G is the 4 chord. Pretty neat, right? Except there's a mild wrinkle here. Remember that the two G chords we have are of differing qualities, which means that they're different chords even if they have the same root, the same letter name. Now, I think that would make what we have here what I'm calling a kind of pivot chord. Some people would call it an altered common chord modulation. Some might call it a common root modulation, but the same concept is there, just with the definitions loosened a little bit. Lastly, let's talk about that violin. Man, is it ever so prominent, and is it ever just killing? Mai Otani is the violinist, and she's a player in the Tokyo scene, having played on a bunch of anime and game soundtracks as well, like Uma Musume, Detective Conan, and Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. Ooh, a little violin there. Now, what I love about how violin is used in this song, and in the context of Laid Back Camp, is that the violin as an instrument has a long and storied history, being used across so many different styles of music in different traditions, cultures, and idioms. But the way that Mai is playing the violin in this track is less of a classical violin style and more of what I would call a fiddle style, a term I would associate with more folk styles as well as Americana. So this history, this rustic traditional vibe, contrasted against that upbeat, poppy J-pop style, I feel really evokes the energy of what Laid Back Camp is to a T. Let's zoom in on a particular section of this song to talk about what Mai is doing in the chorus of this song. The violin part is doing what we call counterpoint by playing a counter melody, a melody that's happening simultaneous to the melodic content but supporting it in a way that is unobtrusive and complementary. We can hear how it's playing off of the vocals by becoming smooth and less busy when the vocals are busy, and countering that by playing fast, busy lines in the spaces between the vocals, all while doubling the vocals during important, hooky melodies. And how about that violin solo, huh? Here we see Mai Otani's virtuosic performance showing off some of the fiddle styles that we were talking about a little bit earlier. Some excellent examples as well of what we call double stops, which is what you call it when a stringed instrument plays two notes on two separate strings. And that slidey double stop sound is very emblematic of the fiddle style. Check out more of Mai's fiddle stuff in an Irish trad session setting with the Japanese group Jidona, as well as her own stuff on Spotify and Instagram. And those are just 3 things that I thought really make this song special. But if you have any other insights, let me know in the comments. Now, as for what I thought about this song, here we go again. Kenan's gonna rate this song. Listen, these are all based on my personal taste. And the beautiful thing about music is that we all like things for different reasons, different emotions and memories attached to certain songs. It's okay if you like Drops of Jupiter and Bad Day, but this is just my personal rating, weighing everything from an artistic to a technical level. So let's take my usual 4-value system here and rate the song, starting with the songwriting. Now, I think this song is written great. I don't speak Japanese as well as I'd like to, so I'm primarily basing this rating on the composition, which is the melody and the chords. I think there's a lot of great hooky melodies here, and I welcome that very much. I appreciate that there's this sense of building from the verse melody and rhythm being more simple and lower, versus the chorus being high energy and more rhythmically complex. In terms of the chords, we're very bog standard here. Verses are going on those 2-5-1s. The chorus has got our dear friend, the Royal Road progression. Here we go, there's the Royal Road there. We saw a couple videos back on that Taylor Swift video. Go watch it if you haven't seen it yet. Put a card right up there. All that said, the songwriting gets an 8. The production here is crisp, clear, and smooth. Not super duper intense, which fits the cozy calming vibe of the show. And yet it still keeps the energy up, which is awesome. I think the arrangement is very smart, very well thought out. The counterlines are genius, and the rhythms throughout are clearly defined and are not cloudy or muddy at all. And because of that, it gets a 10. The performances are killing on this track, from the singing to the violin, and the guitar parts. This track just sounds great, so it gets another 10 from me. Now, in terms of the feel, it's perfectly encapsulating that summer feel for me, that summer vibe. It's so dancey, it's groovy, and even though we're not traditionally like really swinging here, it's a very straight rhythm, it still grooves. So because of that, it gets another 10 from me. Now, averaging out those scores, we get a final score from me of 9.5. Wow, you guys at Kimi no Ne, pat yourselves on the back because you've created one of the best anime openings, I would say, at the very least within the slice of life genre, which is my favorite anime genre, by the way. Great stuff, guys, and go watch Laid Back Camp if you haven't already. I know I'll get to watching season 3 right after this. Thanks for watching this video. Check out this other video where I reacted to and reviewed the VTuber Takanashi Kiara from the Hololive English's newest song, Chimera, or Chimera. If you want more music reviews like this, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and let me know down in the comments which song I should review next. I'll see you in the next one.